Well, good morning for the people who are in in the United States West Coast, and good evening for the people who are in Hong Kong, and then good afternoon for the people in Europe. My name is Winston Hui. I am coordinating or moderating this interview with Amr Henawy, who has been in the Foreign Service for the country of Egypt for a long, long time, and has been the Consul General to the United Kingdom and also to Hong Kong and Macau, and ambassador to Slovakia. And he has been spending almost a month in the Middle East. Right now, he's in Cairo, and this is a turbulent period in the Middle East. And I just thought that maybe it's a good idea for him to share, his experiences and his thought with us today. Now, in addition to Armor, we also have Ming Chen, who is in Vancouver, has been a media commentator and analyst. And so I also invite him to come here to share his thought. First, I give it to Armor. It's yours.
Well, good morning or afternoon, but I guess the evening are sleeping. So I'm reporting here from Cairo. I've been in the region now for 4 weeks. I've been to Oman. I went to the UAE. So, yeah, I mean, I get a feel for what it is. I worked for a long time of my career, and being a citizen of this region, we have been affected by this many times. Unfortunately, it's a reoccurring problem because the root cause of the problem has not been addressed. The problem, I'm going to give a very quick background, and then I will try to tie it to the international powers. And I will then maybe dedicate a bit to where China fits in this region, and possibly the effect or influence of China on this war or conflict, depending on which news you hear. So yeah, this starts, of course, as everyone knows. I mean, this area is the place of religion, is where all the monotheistic religions came, and I think religion has a lot to do also with this conflict. And it starts with the dispute over Jerusalem and the Holy Land, and that land, whether it's Palestine or Israel. This problem starts early last century, but then it was the United Nations, or the British actually, with the Balfour Declaration, and then consecutive UN resolutions that gave a bit of this land to both the Israelis and the Palestinians. Now, how that takes effect later in the past 70 odd years, unfortunately, does not meet the original creation of this, whichever scope where you come from, whether it's Palestine or is Israel or occupied or not. But the indigenous community in the 40s of recent history were the Palestinians, and most of the Israelis came back for a religious reason for their land in Jerusalem. I don't want to go back to how it is, but the Arabs, or a lot of the world, and even the UN, considers that this is an occupied territory originally, then became the state of Israel, and then we are left with wars between the Arabs and the Israelis, or almost the Jews and Muslims. And we are left with a situation where the Palestinian people were left in two areas, which are which you hear in the news, which is the West Bank and Gaza. Now, the Palestinian Authority, the PLO, is the recognized representative of the Palestinian people, but they only have control and influence in what is called the West Bank. Again, I don't think that you need to know all of these things, so I'll go to Gaza and the whether this is a war or is it terrorism or is it a nationalist movement who's trying to get rid of occupation. The Middle East or the Arab world or this region has a lot of factions that are related to Islam that are categorized either terrorists or religious groups without the resort of violence. And some of them are very connected to Iran, which adopts a different type of Islam, and most of them are active in the region, in Lebanon, in Yemen, and in Palestine or Israel. I'm just going very quickly through those to try to define, or not define because we don't have enough time, but the difference between groups that use religion for political reasons, or they're called as terrorists by other countries, or interfere in other countries' business, including Arab countries, not just Israel. Hamas and Hezbollah are considered as militias supported by Iran. Iran has been categorized by the United States as a pariah country which promotes violence in the region and is a threat to Israel, if its strongest ally, Israel being the strongest ally of the United States of America in that region. And that starts way back to the creation of Israel and the Cold War. During the Cold War, Israel was the main ally of the West against some of the other allies of the East, the communists, the Russians, the USSR, and China to some extent, even though it was not involved in this at all, in the eyes of many is considered as part of the East-West conflict even back then. But it was mostly the United States or the West against USSR. It gets very confusing. But as you can see, I'm very tanned, so I've had a great time. I'm not affected by this conflict. It is safe in a lot of pockets, but very unfortunate for a small population of people who do not have many rights. So Israel becomes part of the West. Israel is seen as a haven of democracy in the midst of a barbaric Arab world. And that's really sets the scene of how people see this whole conflict from the outside. So this is not me giving you any personal opinion or one way or the other, but you have to understand that this is a problem of a group of people who used to live on a piece of land and they no longer can govern themselves. In a world that has evolved from Second World War II and colonialism to independent countries, independent people with aspirations for the future, even apartheid ended in South Africa, where the plight of this group of people, and maybe some others, has not been resolved. So this unfortunately causes that every few years we have another problem. And the whole world comes to this region, and there's a lot of innocent people that die, and the future is not stable, and it also exhausts the international community. since China was not a player, the two players, because China after World War II was also part of the South, when we call ourselves as part of the South, which is basically the non-white world, against the developed white world, which is practically identified by the United States and Canada and Europe. It was a war between the West and the East, or between communism, which is the USSR. So in this Cold War, people had to make a choice, especially in our area, which is called the Middle East. So we're caught in the middle. We're torn. We either have to use a policeman, a protector, and America became the policeman after Second World War, that they supposedly helped end the war. The Russians would probably dispute that a lot. So the ones that couldn't become part of that world or polar system, then they went to the USSR, and that's where the conflict gets even more tricky. So every time there was a problem between one of these two parties, the other party immediately came to help, and then we got involved and became part of this this international war. Russia is not as prevalent anymore in the region. America, since the second war between the Arabs and Israel in 1973, which was followed by an embargo of oil, fossil fuel, that was a wake-up call to the West that the rich Gulf can then play a role and can hurt them through energy. So then the Americans became a much more involved party in the region. They have military bases. They're always there. They're the broker that everyone goes to the extent that all the relations between the parties in the region go through the US of A. But this is gradually changing, and it's changed slightly during the started changing back in the Iraq War after 9/11, where the Americans had lost a lot of credibility in the region and a lot of popular support. And they were being blamed not just as the policeman, but really a bully. But what can you do? You have to deal with them. And if Iran is a threat, then you need someone to help you protect you against regional powers. And that's the situation in the Gulf. So America is the main player in the region, has always been. But since Bush, I mean, the last two administrations in America, they started withdrawing a bit from the region. And the Abrahamic Accords that were done during Trump's era were mostly to get the region to start normalizing fully together, because the only country that actually had officially normalized to end the war and not continue at war was Egypt, when President Sadat went to make peace with Israel in 1979. All the other Arab countries, even the ones that had back channels with Israel, had not normalized. That's the official normalization, but on the street is also slightly different as well, because there's a lot of blood, there was wars, and you grow up always fearing the Israeli threat. The Abrahamic Accords were really like a monumental shift, in the sense that it was normalizing fully this relationship, which then pushes supposedly liberation forces that are active still in Palestine to try to defend their country. Like, we have to get rid of the occupation, we have to take our land back. So that's not being resolved politically, it's not being resolved internationally. And regionally, all the Arabs that were trying to help the Palestinians get back their land are now normalizing with Israel, which means that they no longer have a political solution. And the only solution that they have is to get rid of the Jews or the Israelis. And this is where it gets tricky, or which group is actually trying to do this properly within the international laws, and which group has given up on international laws that have not given the Palestinians their rights, and then they have to resort to violent means like Hamas did. Within the Arab world, these liberalization or liberation movements, some of the Arabs believe that these are terrorist groups, even towards Arabs. So they find them as fractions of ISIL, which is the Islamic State, or Egypt categorizes them as Muslim Brotherhood. Hamas is considered as a violent terrorist group by many in the Middle East as well. So when Hamas starts doing something within Israel, then it's seen as terrorism from this faction, not a liberation movement. And then Israel responds in a very heavy-handed, where the casualties or death of children, women, or whatever is 5 times what they suffered from Hamas, if not more. Okay, I'll stop here because this is getting too theoretical. The situation on the ground is, this will probably go on for another 3 to 4 months. And this will most probably lead to drastic changes in the Israeli government and a lot more death. It is a very difficult time for America because America's current administration was not very engaged in the region, and it's not handling international relations as well as administrations in the past. President Biden is seen as an old, weak, feeble man, so that reflects on America's position. And Secretary of State Blinken, when he came to Israel, he said, I come here as a Jew. So that doesn't help the American cause or as a broker at all in any way in the eyes of the Arab street. Even if the governments are trying to contain a regional conflict, you get a lot of pressure from people on the streets getting fed pictures of kids and babies and what have you. They see their own blood. They don't see the Israeli blood. And they get upset that they feel that their blood is cheaper than other blood. Like, why does America come to help Israel? And why do they not help the Palestinians? Why is all of Europe so keen on Ukraine? Because they're white Christian and they don't come help the Palestinians solve their problem. So we're a very highly charged emotional region. And the Americans are not as probably not considered at all as a broker anymore, as an honest broker, but someone applying a lot of double standards. So people would have to look up to the alternative, to the other strong power in the world, or strong powers. So immediately China comes into the picture. Only that China does not have any history of involvement in the region at all, nor does it seek, apart from recently brokering a deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran. China is not known to come in and try to protect or help its allies militarily or get heavily involved. So does China want to engage? Can China engage? Well, we haven't seen. It's been, what, 3-4 weeks now. China is, as it always does, it's very calculated, just observing what's happening. It's only the Americans that sent, again, a plane carrier. So where do we go from here? Here in Egypt, everyone is having a fantastic normal life. A lot of people are watching TV and sending donations. The economy is struggling, so no one is going forward. So the set of values that we all share with China or the South, of equal rights, the right to rule for the Palestinian. China is a great supporter of the Palestinian cause. Is not working. It's just failing. And what it is, it's affecting people's livelihood. It's affecting the future of the planet. It's affecting the future of business. It's affecting tension in where the chain of products, of merchandise, of people is being disrupted, and a lot of loss of life, and there's no justice to some extent. I think I've sort of given an idea that, you know, there are a lot of things going on, and I will come to the Gulf as well, because you probably need to have an idea about how that Gulf is involved, because that's an area of interest economically for Asia and the rest of the world with its accumulated wealth. Life goes on. All the governments are having problems having to know how to deal with this. They don't want to push this conflict to any more wars in the region. And at the same time, they have to maintain relations with America. And they've been very keen on promoting and their relations with China as well. So Saudi Arabia is holding a lot of summits, and it's being heavily criticized for holding summits or any events while the poor Palestinians are getting massacred. The UAE is the same. They've made the choice that they want to continue to pretty much adopt the Chinese model. We have to go forward, we have to progress, and we have to move with life and avoid conflict by peaceful negotiations without any military intervention. Egypt is the same, and what we're faced with at the moment is we don't know how long this will take. We don't have a strong America to talk to or understand what their intentions are. I think that this conflict has no winners. The biggest loser will probably be Netanyahu and his party. America at the moment, I think, is losing also around the world in terms of soft power and international support for its position in the conflict. And maybe they will try then to, so people are asking, why is America in the region? Why did America bring its airplane carriers and show such apparent support to Israel? I think it's probably to stop or deter this getting out of hand. And I think that in a couple of months, if this continues the way it is, the American administration will try then to broker a peace deal, which has happened in the past. Almost every single election year, the American administration either engaged or promoted an international crisis and then brokered the peace deal, especially in the Middle East. Clinton has done it before, to come back and show what they're doing on the international front and focus on that, perhaps, if they are weaker on the domestic issues. I'll stop here, and then maybe we can get the questions. Or how does this affect America? How does this affect the China? How it affects the region and trade? I'm happy to then engage. I'll pass it on to you.
Okay, all right. Let's Ming, can you kind of comment on this?
Okay, thank you very much, Amar. It's very good information. You know that there are many news about Palestinian and Israel in the last few weeks in the West. But what we can get from the West medium is not complete, or in the other words, I would say very, very biased. Since you are now in Cairo and you have been service for the country, I mean, as a diplomat for a long time, you definitely know more than we do. So the first question is, now you are in Egypt. I just want to know, what's the position of the Egyptian government and the Egyptian people on this issue? Because from the report from CNN or BBC, they seldom talk about the people reactions in the Middle East for this problem. And can you share with us how the first Egyptian people, how they react or their position on this conflict between Hamas and Israel?
Yeah, this war that Israel is waging against an underground group of people and a civil society is not a fair one. the intention of Israel at the moment and Netanyahu, because of the severity of the strike of Hamas this time, is that he wants to get the Israeli civilians out of Gaza to finish off Hamas. Now, this is completely ludicrous. Gaza was, from the beginning of this conflict, when the Israelis occupied, and this is the truth. I'm here, I'm no longer a diplomat. I can use some of terminology that you do not hear in international media. So since Palestine was occupied by Israelis, they wanted to get rid of Gaza mostly because it's ungovernable. It was very poor until they found some gas recently. Overpopulated. They gave it to Yasser Arafat, the head of the PLO, to burn in it because of the day-to-day problems and poverty and lack of perspective in that place. Egypt and Jordan refused to take administration for that, because if you allowed Israel to get away with that, then they get rid of the Palestinians, and the Palestinians will never get their land back. And then then you participate, you become part of them losing their political rights. Number one. Point number two, if I go back to Hamas, it is almost a well-known fact that Hamas was supported by the United Kingdom and Israel in the creation of Hamas as a religious group. It's basic fundamentals of international relations or political science is if you have a political dispute, if you dilute that into a religious conflict, you lose the war once and for all. So there is almost consensus in the region that Hamas is a creation of Israel. To continue to make this into a religious feud between terrorists and a democratic country, rather than the political rights of a people to get their land back. So these are problems that people don't know. So Egypt normalized because we couldn't go to war again. We don't want to go to war again. But the people never forget that there is injustice in the region. Now, what Israel is trying to do here, or Netanyahu is trying to do to save his job, is to send the Palestinians, the poor Palestinian civilians that don't want to get caught in the crossfire, to Egypt. And we will pay the Egyptians money because the Egyptian economy is struggling.
Yeah.
The people don't like that. Egypt will never accept that. We have had 4 bombs fall over the border, quite far from the cities in Sinai. And we have restrained from engaging with the Israelis or whoever administration is, because we need to have more peace-loving people in the region that think about the future, not someone who's just trying to turn it into a huge bloody war in the middle to save his job, which was most of the time one of the problems of the Israeli democracies. You always had leaders who made the whole population believe that they were under immediate threat of disappearing off the face of the planet. So we have to go to war with the rest of with our neighbors, at least, which is, even if it was true, it's counterproductive. And there are other ways of living with your neighbors, whether you like them or not. I mean, look at Europe. They went to World War. They killed each other. But now they've learned, like, we have to now live in peace because we have to find another way. And this is what we ask for. But what we say is, if you don't solve the core problem, it will never go. So now there's a huge pressure, supposedly, to empty Gaza out of its people and dump it on someone else. Now, the people on the street in the Middle East who were becoming more tolerant to the presence of Israel, even if it still hasn't given the land back to the Palestinians, cannot stand for this. They've had enough, and they will not accept that this is being done. So now the streets are quite angry, and the streets are quite angry. And America because we are trying our best, or the governments are trying their best to control people's emotions, not to turn this into a huge war. I don't think they're hearing the message. So you've got things happening in the UK, I think on campuses in America and a lot of different countries, just to reach the voice of the world conscience of what's happening. But the governments are not following suit. And they're putting the governments here in this region under a lot of pressure. These are people who are getting a proper feed that you don't get. You don't get that on the CNN and the double standard stuff. They're seeing little babies, which are, okay, some of it is fake. But then the American president comes out after, like, everyone here was like in tears, you know, hearing about the hospital being bombed. So from this region, oh my God, hospital, all these civilians and little kids. And then the American president goes, well, I have information that it was coming from the south. It came from Yemen. And that's what he means. Now, the Yemenis, Houthis, have shown that they can send drones all the way to Saudi. But then from Saudi, not damaged. It really doesn't make sense. So what the Western media is doing is extremely counterproductive, to say the least, and double standards by every means, and putting the voices of peace, the people that actually want a peaceful future, under a lot of pressure. Can you hear me well?
And now, okay.
Oh, so you didn't hear the rest before? I'm sorry.
Last
Was
few
I cut
seconds.
off?
The last few seconds only. Okay.
Well, it was the last few seconds was like, I hope that answered some of your question. I'm happy to answer more later.
Okay, so well, I absolutely agree with you. You know, that's why I need to get some more information from you about the people in the Middle East reaction. You know, the Western media, okay, I don't trust them at all nowadays. So it's just their report about China, about Middle East, is totally biased. Okay, sometimes
It's the same. It's exactly the same that they do about China. It's how they categorize. They call it a conflict. They don't call it a war. It's not. It's a massacre. It's a genocide.
Yeah, they say
People here believe it's a genocide. You cannot use that. Yeah, and it is. I mean, if you see the numbers of people that are getting killed, and asking people to leave their land so they can bomb the shit out of it. I mean, it's really. Excuse me, I didn't mean that. I mean, the people are very angry in this region, and they've had to restrain so much. And I think they're very brave to be able to restrain, but there's just, why do you do this? And for the sake of Israel, the only way, the only future for Israel is for people around it to accept it. Exactly. If you continue to do this, I mean, we haven't had a war for 2 generations now. You do this again, you create more blood, you create more desire for vengeance in a generation that had forgotten the blood. It doesn't help them. It doesn't help anyone.
Okay, I absolutely agree with you. And peace is not easy, but we had to find a way to get a peace. But anyway, you just mentioned about Muslim Brotherhood, okay? And I just want to know, I don't want to say that the Hamas is the branch or subsidiary of the Muslim Brotherhood, but I believe they have very strong connections. So on this one, do you think that the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt still have an influence to Hamas?
No.
Okay.
No, they don't. If there is an influence, I think that the training and maybe some of the arms would go back to Iran.
Mm-hmm.
Does Iran control them? I don't believe so fully. They probably got a green light, or they were told this was happen. But you know, this area is full of conspiracies and things that cannot be explained easily. You think to yourself, Israel has a wall where an ant cannot come through without being shot. They have a they are obsessed with the security. For them to cross, to bring a bulldozer and break the wall and go in, I don't know for how many hours. There's a lot of question marks on how that happened. And especially that I think it's a fact, it's a known fact that they were warned even by the Egyptian authorities, not because the Egyptian authorities want to tell them intelligence as much as like, we know what happens when this happens, when something like this reoccurs. We know. We don't want to. So please don't allow it to happen, because Hamas is considered, I mean, they've had a lot of, they've caused Egypt a lot of terrorist attacks. Against us, yeah, they have. So we are not, we categorize Hamas as a terrorist group, and we categorize also the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist group. But they don't work together to, I mean, I worked in security, to my knowledge. Of course, officially we can say that a lot, but I don't think that it's very strong.
Okay.
You can blame it for other things.
Okay. And how strong is the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt now? I remember around 12 years ago, about a very short time, they formed a government in Egypt, right?
Yes. Yes. Now the influence on, so a Muslim Brotherhood is a group that was the creation of the British again, and early last century. Had to do a lot with the influence of as we were talking before the interview, with the Ottomans and their sort of endeavors with Europe. It is a political move, like a lot of political moves that uses religion as a pretext. They'd have resorted to violence many times in their past. They did, even when then they were in government here in Egypt, they invited all the terrorists from every different faction, on many violent factions, which are considered as terrorists by everyone in the world, not just Egypt. Back to Egypt, they tried to destabilize the country and its identity. I don't think that they have any political presence at the moment. I think the financial ability has been completely destroyed.
Okay.
You know, this is a religious community. This region is a religious region, generally speaking. And when you have a region that has had to suffer from post-colonial identity crisis, you were colonized, you came out of the colonization, and you came into a world where you had to choose to be American or communist Russian. And you're not this or this. So you start looking for an identity. You search for an identity. And that was the problem of the whole countries of the South. Countries like Egypt or China, they're big enough to draw from their history. A lot of the other countries would not do that. So, and then you had a lot of, a lot of injustice in the world since then. Things that happened in Vietnam, things that are all over the world, in Iraq, countries that have disappeared. And I think a lot of people in the region sort of decided, okay, well, let's become religious, more religious. And that becomes an identity. And you become, in this part of the world, there is another life. And that second life is either in heaven or hell. So if this life is hell, I might as well be religious and go to heaven next. So that became as almost like an identity of its own. So people who are virtuous, who are religious, who look religious, became then very popular in this part of the world. And everyone that was not was then perceived as corrupt or without morals. So unfortunately, even the successful people would immediately, if they didn't have to wear and adopt a religious aura, became then suspicious. So that's how the religion became a tool for purity, for good governance, the frame of those people. And of course, it was very easy then to use for political gain.
Okay. Okay.
Understand. Trying to simplify it and sort of really give our viewers an insight into things that I think they would never understand unless they lived here for a very long time. maybe not even understand when I say it, but I'm just trying to simplify to dissect things that I don't expect them to know.
Okay, yeah. Okay. My next question is looks like this war will be last for months, if not years. What do you think about the Palestinian people in Gaza? I mean, this is really a disaster. It's a war zone. And there's no such thing called Gaza refugees so far. And nobody can leave Gaza, right? I mean, except maybe a few hundred yesterday. And where the people can go, I think Israel's idea or their plan is to push all the Palestinian people out of Gaza. And well, the only way you see that the one side is Israel and they don't accept the people. Another side is the ocean. And the only one way which is they can only go is Egypt, the Sinai Desert. What do you think about the solution of these Palestinian refugees in Gaza?
It's for Israel to stop killing them and give them back their land.
Of course, that's a very ideal. But even that, the Gaza after this war will be like.
It's not the first. It's not the first time.
Yes, not the first.
So unfortunately, they've done this before. They have buried their dead, and they will not leave their land. So what is the only thing we've been trying to open the border to bring in assistance and take people for treatment, and the border was bombed by mistake by Israel 4 times.
Yeah, by mistake.
They blocked it specifically. So now that they've allowed some of the casualties to come out, but Egypt will not be able to, and no president is going to be able to allow people to come and settle in the Sinai, which the Egyptians fought so much for to get back. This is the land of turquoise. This is the land where Moses went and where Virgin Mary sought refuge. It's far beyond comprehension or politicians. This would lead to very, very negative consequences here. And the war, I think, will not take years. This is a cyclical problem that happens because the origin of the problem is not solved. This is a problem because we don't have a multipolar world where there's a balance between powers and countries. This is the reason of having just an unequal system. And I think it's mostly, if I may say so, remnants of the white privilege, and finally, maybe we are in a world where we need to come together and put it right, set it right. But no, this should, by February, unfortunately, but I mean, the toll of innocent death and the suffering. Now, there is a UN body called UNRWA for the refugees of Palestine, but it's very poorly funded and it cannot operate easily. UNRWA.
Yeah, I agree. Because, that's, I think everybody knows what Israel is trying to do. That's why the King of Jordan, Abdullah, and the Egypt president say no, the Palestinian refugees cannot go to Jordan and cannot go to Egypt. But if they cannot go, leave Gaza at the moment, it is a disaster.
They won't leave. They won't leave. They will defend their country till the last. They will not leave. Even if we open the border, I promise you, they will not leave.
Yeah,
if they leave the land. They will not do that. They've been fighting for it since the 40s. They will not leave.
Yeah, but they also,
regardless of sorry,
political is not right. There's no way to ask Egypt to accept or to take over all these 2.5 million people. And economy, I mean, Egypt is not doing well at the moment. You know that. I mean, we know that.
It's not about the economy. It's not about the economy. This is part of the conspiracy theory in the Middle East, that this was Israel's intention, the Zionist, expansionist intentions from the beginning.
Yes.
From the Nile to the Euphrates.
You have
the Nile to the Euphrates.
Yeah, you had the support
Yeah.
from the world, except the West, okay? Except the West. Maybe only, what, 40 countries in the world, right? We had 193?
If you listen to Biden today, I think his speech has already changed.
Yes,
If you
because,
listen to what he's already changed.
yeah,
It's
I hope.
look, we've seen it every single time. And people talk about the Israeli lobby in the United States. It is a world that we live in that was based on a set of moral values and and parameters that were set by hypocritical double standards of the West. This
Yes.
is the truth. Now, when I was a diplomat, or even now, if I engage in a conversation like this in a much more formal platform, I probably would not say a few things that I've just said now. But this is the truth. This is the naked truth that no one wants to deal with or cannot even handle. So, but this is where we needed more strength and more powers and more support. And this is what the street now is really upset with Arab governments. They feel that Saudi Arabia is rich enough and strong enough, maybe with a few other Arabs as a group, to be able to come to the aid of the Palestinians more. So the street is very unhappy with its rulers. But I tell you what, I'm old enough now. I've seen this a few times. It was exactly the same narrative.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's the same narrative, and it's the leaders, and the leaders are afraid of America, and they're all traitors. And if the Arabs unite, they can crush Israel. It's exactly that. What saddens me very much is that the future of the region and its people is always hostage to, again, the reactions, I can call it, to Israel's persistence not to have enough voices of peace to understand that the future is bright only if they allowed a two-state solution and gave some of the land, not even all of it, back to the Palestinians under the administration. Gaza is under the control of it doesn't even under the PLO. So they have everything goes through Israel. It's an international law. An occupying power has obligations towards the occupied.
Yes. Yes.
It's very simple. There's just no one wants to talk about it. The occupier under international law that was made or set by the Western world and hostages and what have you is the duty of the occupier. So you cannot claim that I have no legal international obligations to protect the people that I occupy from the actions of a terrorist group, as it's called, Hamas. That doesn't work.
Yeah, it's international crime. United Nations have many solutions about the Palestinian problem in the last,
Yep.
at least years.
Many numbers, 242, we can go on forever.
Mention or remember, okay, it's horrible. Maybe 110 countries agree, and only United States and Israel, maybe a few less than 10. Oh, we against. Oh, it's not a solution. I mean, for United Nations with the United States to control the Middle East, I mean, difficult solutions. Anyway, well, that's all my questions. And Winston and the other audience, do you have any questions for Amma?
Yeah, of course. Let me ask a question, and then we'll open it up. So, Amber, in your write-up for this announcement, you said that Hamas is not ISIS. It is more like a Taliban.
Yes.
Okay. Now, the way I understand what you said is that, of course, ISIS is trying to form its own country. Uh, but it's not associated with the people that they govern. I think I'm trying to talk, as I think. Now, on the other case, Taliban is in Afghanistan. Taliban is more like, um, how do I say it? It's more like the government. It is the government. So, can you elaborate on why you say that Hamas is more a Taliban than an ISIS?
Yeah, so it's actually originally called ISIL, which
Mm-hmm.
is Islamic State in Levantine. Levantine is what is now called Syria, Jordan, Israel, Palestine, what have you, Lebanon. This was all called the Levantine. There were no borders.
Mm-hmm.
They are a terrorist formation that calls of making a Islamic State, as in without any borders, that all the Muslims would be together.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not an indigenous group from a country that
Mm-hmm.
adopts, I don't know, Christianity as a religion or what have you. Many countries have that. Taliban is a group of Afghanis that were supported actually by the Americans to kick out the Russians. And bin Laden was trained, perhaps, with the help of the Americans. And this was mostly part of the Chechen war. So Taliban means, the name is actually means that you're seeking knowledge. And Hamas is the same. Hamas are Palestinians who have to adopt according to them, as to resort to violent means to liberate their country.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
ISIS or ISIL is just a terrorist group with different factions from different countries that use the Islamic State as a sexy word to do what they want, just kill everybody. I mean, look, it's mostly Al Qaeda is bin Laden, who was collaborating with the Americans to get rid of the Russians, who his main goal in life actually was not America. He wanted to get rid of the atheist of his family, the Saudi royals. Bin Laden is a very big family in Saudi Arabia. And the guy just wanted to get rid of the Saudi royals. And then when the Americans backed them, and he turned against the Americans too.
Yeah, I was interpreted. I was in. I interpreted your comparison, thinking that you meant that Hamas is ingrained, into Gaza, into the Gaza people, is part of them. Then you cannot extract them. That means you cannot destroy them unless you destroy Gaza. So I interpret that when you say they are like Taliban, because like in Afghanistan, the United States went in, drove them out, but eventually the Taliban, I assume,
They
loved
are.
by their people, the Afghans.
No, loved.
Are you saying the Gazans love the
No, I didn't
Hamas?
say that. No, and I didn't
Okay,
say Talibans are not popular in all Afghanistan either. No, but they're
all right.
indigenous Afghani people, so this is part of an internal fabric. But the Taliban are not popular. I personally served in Kabul for a few weeks, and the Hamas are not popular in Gaza. So the poor population, the person that wakes up in the morning that had to go to work and take his little kids, or was reporting on TV and heard about his kids getting killed from a bomb while he was on TV reporting what's happening, is suffering from Hamas starting something that they cannot finish. This new wave of turning Israel on, or I mean, we believe it had a lot to do with the imminent normalization deal that was about to happen with Saudi Arabia. They wanted to blow that up, which will happen. It will be delayed, but it will blow it up. So these are innocent civilians who are caught in the middle between everyone, between Hamas, between Israel, between the Arabs who will not open the borders. And as you said, they've got the sea. So they might come to Europe, and then it's a European problem too. I mean, that's what happened in Syria. That's what happened in Iraq. You bombed the place. America actually assisted in the process. You got rid of the regime. You had no exit plan, no exit strategy, and what people were driven into the ocean and then landed in Europe. And then it became a problem for Europe too. It's a problem for humanity when you don't solve these problems. Everyone is affected, except a few politicians that continue to use it as a pretext to stay in power.
Yeah, it's the looks like there's no solution. Of course, unless the Israelis would, let the Palestinian has, to have his own country.
Human rights, the right to live, the right to govern, the right to dream, the right to education.
Mm.
Many rights that the whole international community supposedly agreed upon. But as you said, the General Assembly says something, and then the Security Council vetoes with 1 or 2, and then the Security Council comes and tells the other 150 countries how we should conduct the world that we live in. But I mean, in the last 15 years, we've had another phenomenon that everyone's been working outside the UN framework anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Like now it's basically what the new international world order is working with outside that. I mean, what Russia did, and each country now is basically exercising its own interpretation of self-defense.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Saudi Arabia joined the BRICS this year. I mean, there's a totally different international organizations. Right?
Yeah. And they too went into Yemen with their own alliance, and no one held them. No one has ever talked about the plight of what happened to the Yemenis, because Saudis got accumulated wealth and no one can make enemies with them. So
yeah,
it's still ongoing, by the way, but just no one talks about it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm only an observer, so because my views should not be misinterpreted into what I agree with or what I disagree with. I'm only trying to, as we did from that meeting that I did this recording with you, all I'm doing is just that I'm here and I'm just relaying and sharing what it feels like on the ground.
Yeah, your information is more in tune with the with the Middle East. We are only looking from the outside, but it's to me, I learned quite a bit today. I mean, your viewpoint is quite interesting, and I think it's true. But anyway, I saw Paul, thinking, and Paul, do you want to unmute yourself and comment?
See you soon, Paul. How are you doing, mate?
You have to unmute yourself. Unmute. You need to unmute yourself. Unmute.
Winston, if you think that there is a desire or appetite, I'm very happy to with you, and we can lead groups here or even send some reports through the GBX that people can subscribe to about sort of updates. I can talk with you about this later. So if your audience...
we should pursue something. I'm almost sure that we can, especially after today, we can have a Middle East chapter. But Paul, you are ready. Paul?
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out, the screen kind of black out,
We see you.
Strange. Hold on.
No, don't mess around. Just say anything. I mean, right now you are hurt.
Okay, good. Yeah, well, it's very disturbing. I talked to you, about a week ago and chat a bit about the situation. It's been worrisome. You knew that, I have some engagement, with one of the Israeli, concern, and that is hitting me quite hard. I don't know how to deal with it. But anyway, there have been a lot of different saying from different angles, from different sources, and some even, have the kind of devastating, kind of image that, World War III is coming along, and what is your view on that? And will it go that bad?
World War III is already ongoing in Ukraine, my friend.
Yeah.
Well, a world war is when well, you cannot have a war unless it takes two to tango. So you have to have two parties that are willing to go to war, right? A world war is more than two, right?
Okay.
That's what's happening in Ukraine. It's happening quietly. It's not actually spreading, and no one is using the nuclear button yet. I don't think that anyone will allow this to go outside the borders except Israel. Israel would be antagonizing the neighboring countries to the point of no return. So
they are threatening with the kind of the message that the fingers on the button, and if things doesn't go our way, you will see, that is kind of worrisome.
Well, look, we've gone through this now for many years.
Yeah.
It's not the first time, and it's not going to be the last time, and it will never end.
Yeah. Okay.
So no, I mean, look, again, I'm not, all my life in my career, some of my colleagues, they spend their whole life trying to resolve this problem, and they failed. And we wake up to it all the time. So I cannot predict, but just by observing what happened before, I give it until latest February. Okay. But until February, you'll have a lot of innocent people die. But yeah, the threat that it would turn regional is always there, but I think no one can afford to do that at the moment. Yeah, let's hope so. And one question would like to seek your expert opinion on is, the way how the European countries are behaving. Okay. They are, as you said, kind of sided with the US and so on and so forth. And you see any difference in attitude in the way the Europeans always come do the same. Unwavering support for Israel and its right to protect itself and its people, and condemn terrorist activities, but by what's considered as liberation movements, and then give aid to Israel and give aid to the poor Palestinians. So we've seen it all before. It's the same thing. Like Sunak would give the Israelis support and money, and then go give the Palestinians 20%, 20 whatever. And I don't know how you cannot get it to them because Israel doesn't allow the border. So it's very complicated, and it's very complicated for everyone, because also Egypt. I mean, let me add this as well from my perspective as someone that's worked before. So if you allow Palestinians to come into the Sinai as refugees, you are bound to have Hamas militants embedded in those, which is what happened when the immigrants went to Europe. Those people, when they come here, they will not stop their violent struggle. And they will launch this from Egypt. So then Egypt then becomes a warring party against Israel, which is trigger happy. Israel is trigger happy, unfortunately. Yeah. Everyone in Israel has a bomb, and everyone has arms, because they feel that everyone around them is trying to put an end to Israel. It's a very unfortunate feeling that you're always threatened, that everyone wants to get rid of you. So that's another problem. how do you, and who do you bring back here and why? Because if anyone is trained enough to understand the tactics or the works of liberation movements or any underground organization, they operate from everywhere. They use all these ways with which states can control.
So another
Right.
question I want to throw is that, you know, the Middle East, being Middle East, is mostly Muslim, right? By population and so on and so forth. So many Muslim countries around, you know, they are, I think, in principle, supportive of Palestinian, right? So, well, political aside, you know, what you see, you know, they will do.
The biggest Muslim country is Indonesia, actually.
Yeah, okay, all right.
You have a lot. You have just
I mean,
almost as.
in the vicinity, okay, in the vicinity.
No, I think it's a Muslim cause. It has been from the beginning like a Muslim cause against those Jews who did this in a lot of circles. So, and because again, after World War II, as I believe a lot of countries or the whole world was looking for a new identity. So religion, even in America, I mean, all the blacks, like I mean, I don't mean it in any derogatory term, but Black Americans, a lot of them adopted Islam as an identity, and they bonded with clay. So when Ali played, because he was Muslim, yeah, that's very ripe, and that goes across all the way to the borders of China, if not also with the minorities of China. So the religious aspect of it is very big. I didn't want to go there because, again, this is a political conflict. This is the political strife of a group of people that have political rights that were not guaranteed or given by the international community according to international law. It's not a religious.
Yeah, sorry, but the religious, you know, overtone is very strong, and there have been recent reports that, you know, like what they have done before, you know, the Arabic world, you know, the Muslims talking about, you know, embargo and so on and so forth to Israel. How you see it?
Maybe, well, they did that back in, I don't think there's an appetite for that anymore. Some of the countries have moved on. Plus, I can send you a few formerly known as Twitter accounts of Coptic Christian Egyptians.
Okay.
And you can read what they feel about this conflict.
Okay.
It's not just the Muslims.
So
all right.
So let's you know Amr has to go, and let's end it here, and let me. I'm going to form a small group of you know, people who are interested in the Middle East, and this would be an action item. All right, I'll do that. But let me thank Amr for coming here to share, you know, his thought with us. I learned quite a bit today, something very new to me. I never thought. I come out from this meeting knowing and negating some of the things that I thought before. So that, you know, it makes a difference to me. So thank you for that. So I also thank Ming for coming in and all the rest. Okay, so see you next time, and bye bye.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you.